The strange invention. Daniel lived far from the busy colony streets, in a small workshop made of old metal and wood. People often said he was a strange human, always building things that no one asked for. They laughed at him, called him a dreamer, sometimes even a fool. But Daniel never cared. His hands loved machines and his mind loved ideas. He believed that even useless machines had a purpose, a hidden spark waiting to shine. One cold evening, while Daniel was searching for spare parts near the edge of the forest, he heard a soft cry. It was weak, almost broken, like the voice of someone who had lost all hope. He followed the sound and found a small alien girl sitting against a tree. Her eyes were closed tightly. Her clothes were torn and her body shook with fear. Daniel knelt down and spoke gently, but the girl did not look at him. Then he realized the truth. She was blind. The girl belonged to a rare alien species, a people known for their bright skin and crystal eyes. But this child's eyes were empty, clouded, and lifeless. Daniel's heart tightened. He had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing as sad as this. He reached out his hand, and after a moment the girl touched it carefully. Her small fingers trembled, but she did not pull away. In that simple touch, Daniel felt her silent cry for help. He brought her back to his workshop, giving her food and warmth. The girl said little, only her name, a soft sound that Daniel could barely understand. She had been left behind, unwanted by her own people. Her blindness made her weak in their eyes, a burden to carry. Daniel's heart burned with anger. He could not believe any world would reject a child for something she could not control. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He stared at his shelves filled with half-finished machines, gears, wires, and broken screens. An idea began to grow inside him, wild and dangerous. What if he could give the girl something no one else dared to give her? Sight. Not perfect sight. Not the eyes she was born without. But something different. Something new. A visor, a prototype, a machine that could turn sound, heat, and light into shapes and colors. It was only a dream. But Daniel had always lived inside dreams. For days he worked without rest. His fingers moved fast, his mind faster. The girl sat nearby, listening to the sound of tools and sparks. Sometimes she asked, "What are you building?" But Daniel only smiled and said, "Something important." He did not want to promise her anything, but hope was already glowing inside her. Finally, the visor was ready. It was not beautiful, just metal and glass held together with wires and tiny circuits. But it was alive, buzzing with quiet power. Daniel looked at the girl and said softly, "Do you trust me?" She nodded without fear. He placed the visor gently over her head, adjusting the straps. For a moment, nothing happened. Only silence. Daniel's heart sank. Maybe it had failed. Maybe he had given her false hope. But then, the girl gasped. Her empty eyes widened, and her small hands reached out to touch the air. "I see light. I see color," she whispered, her voice breaking with wonder. Tears ran down her cheeks, her first tears of joy. She looked around, not fully seeing like a human, but shapes, shadows, and colors appeared before her. The flicker of Daniel's workshop lamp, the glow of the fire, the outline of his face. She laughed, a sound so pure that Daniel felt his heart shatter and heal at the same time. For the first time in her life, the blind girl saw a piece of the world. And Daniel, the man everyone called a fool, had given her that gift. They spent hours exploring. She touched objects and then laughed when she could see their outline through the visor. Daniel explained everything with patience, describing colors, shapes, and stars. Her favorite was blue, the color of the small flame on his machine. She said it was soft, like music she could hear with her eyes. But as the night grew quiet, Daniel felt something strange. He stepped outside and looked around the dark forest. The air felt heavier, as if shadows were moving where no shadows should be. He thought he heard footsteps, slow and careful, watching but unseen. His machines inside flickered for a moment, like they had caught an invisible signal. Daniel frowned, a cold shiver running down his spine. When he returned, the girl had fallen asleep with the visor resting beside her. Daniel sat beside her, but his thoughts were restless. He had broken no law, yet it felt as if he had crossed a forbidden line. Somewhere, someone had noticed what he had done. And Daniel knew, deep inside, that giving the girl sight would not remain a secret for long. In the silence of that night, a question burned inside him. Who else now knew about the strange invention, and why did the shadows feel closer with every passing hour? The gift of sight. The morning sun touched the roof of Daniel's workshop, turning the old metal sheets into gold. Inside, the alien girl sat on a chair, holding the visor in her hands like it was treasure. Her cloudy eyes still looked empty, but behind them there was light, a new kind of fire. She whispered Daniel's name, asking softly, "Can I wear it again?" Daniel smiled and nodded. "Yes, but carefully, it is only a prototype." The moment she placed the visor on her head, her face changed. Her lips curved into a small smile, her hands reached out like she wanted to catch the light. She turned her head from one side to another, laughing when she saw the shadow of Daniel moving. Every corner of the workshop was a new world to her. Every flicker of light a miracle. Daniel felt his chest tighten. The sound of her laughter was sweeter than any machine he had ever built. The girl took slow steps, guided by what little her new eyes showed. Her hand brushed against the table, the walls, the tools. She moved carefully but without fear. Daniel stayed close, ready to catch her if she stumbled. But she stood straight, her small voice full of joy. "I can walk. I can walk by myself." Outside, the colony had begun to wake. Neighbors noticed strange noises from Daniel's workshop, laughter mixed with clinking metal. Some ignored it, saying, "The human is playing with his useless toys again." But others whispered, "I heard a child's voice. I thought he lived alone." Curiosity turned to gossip. Gossip turned to quiet suspicion. And from a distance, watchful eyes began to follow. Daniel tried to keep the girl hidden, but her excitement was hard to control. She wanted to see everything, the trees, the fire, the sky. Daniel finally let her step outside at night when the colony slept. The stars stretched across the sky, countless points of light. The girl gasped, her body trembling. "So many lights, so many colors," Daniel explained. "That is the universe, endless and waiting." She reached toward the sky as if she could touch it, tears shining in her eyes. But with every night of secret stargazing, Daniel's unease grew stronger. He remembered the warnings written in old colony books. Humans must not interfere with the weaknesses of other species. The rule was not explained, but it was repeated like sacred law. Helping was considered dangerous, even forbidden. And now Daniel had not only broken it, but shattered it with his invention. One evening, as Daniel adjusted the visor's settings, the girl asked, "Why did no one help me before?" Her question cut through the quiet room, sharp and painful. Daniel paused, his hands frozen on the machine. How could he tell her the truth, that her blindness was seen as shame by her own people, that humans were warned not to interfere? He chose silence, only saying, "Sometimes people are afraid of what they do not understand." But inside, anger burned hotter than fire. The girl's steps grew steadier, her movements sharper. She began to map the world in her own way. She knew where the table stood, where the fire flickered, where Daniel's tools lay. She even learned to fix small pieces of the visor, her small fingers working with surprising care. Daniel was proud, but pride was mixed with fear. Every day she grew stronger, every day the risk grew larger. One night, while Daniel worked late, a strange hum filled the air. It was low, steady, unnatural. He stepped outside and saw lights in the sky. Faint, distant, but moving in formation. Not stars, not natural. His stomach twisted. He knew the sound of patrol ships. He whispered to himself, "They are searching." He rushed back inside, trying to hide his worry. The girl looked at him with concern, her visor glowing softly. "Why are you afraid?" she asked. Daniel forced a smile. "It is nothing, just old machines making noise." But his hands shook as he locked the doors and shut off the lights. He knew it was not nothing. The next morning, the colony buzzed with quiet fear. People spoke of strange ships hovering at night, lights that vanished before dawn. Some said it was only a story. Others said it was the Empire watching. When Daniel passed through the market for supplies, he felt eyes on his back. Conversations stopped when he walked near. Whispers rose when he left. He knew the rumors were spreading. About the girl. About his invention. Back in the workshop, the girl sat by the window, visor glowing as she watched the world. She asked softly, "Why do people hate what they cannot see?" Daniel had no answer, but he knelt beside her and said, "As long as I live, you will not be alone." She touched his hand, trusting him completely. In that moment, Daniel felt the weight of his choice. He had not only given sight to one child, but had challenged the silence of an entire empire. That night, the strange hum returned, louder than before. Daniel's machines flickered, screens flashed with strange signals. The girl tilted her head and whispered, "Someone is near." Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at the dark sky and saw shadows moving again, but this time they were closer. As he stood at the door, watching the horizon, 4 faint lights dropped from the sky. Not stars, not ships, passing by, but landing signals. 4 ships, small and sharp, touching the ground with deadly silence. Daniel whispered to himself, "They have found us." And deep in his chest, he knew. The gift of sight he had given was about to bring war. To his door, shadows in the sky. The colony slept under the pale glow of twin moons, but Daniel could not rest. He stood outside his workshop, eyes fixed on the horizon where 4 lights had vanished. The night air was heavy, carrying a silence too sharp to be natural. Every instinct in his body whispered danger, though no soldier had yet appeared. He touched the edge of the door, looking back at the small alien girl asleep inside, visor resting beside her. Her breathing was soft, peaceful, untouched by the storm that was coming. Daniel whispered to himself, "I must protect her no matter what." He returned to his machines, switching them on one by one. Screens flickered with green light, showing strange signals bouncing in the air. The readings were not normal. They pulsed like a hidden heartbeat. Steady and powerful, he traced the frequency and his fear grew. It was not random noise, it was tracking. Someone was searching. Someone had locked onto his invention. The next morning, the colony buzzed with nervous energy. Children played quietly. Merchants spoke in half sentences, and elders avoided eye contact. Ships had been seen in the sky again, shadows that came and went without warning. The people feared the Empire but dared not speak its name. Daniel kept his head low as he moved through the market, gathering food and supplies. But everywhere he went, whispers followed him. Some said he was hiding something. Others said the Empire had already marked him. Daniel ignored them, but his heart carried the weight of every word. Back in the workshop, the girl was learning faster than he expected. With the visor on, she could now walk across the room without touching the walls. She laughed as she picked up tools, naming them with confidence. She pointed at the fire and whispered, "Red." Her voice full of awe. Daniel smiled, proud of her strength, but fear stabbed at him like a blade. The stronger she became, the more dangerous it was for both of them. One evening, as Daniel adjusted the visor, the girl asked softly, "Why do I see more than light?" Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She explained. "Sometimes I see heat. Sometimes I see lines in the air, things I cannot touch." Daniel froze, realizing what had happened. The visor was not just giving her sight. It was evolving, showing her things beyond normal vision. She was seeing energy, currents, hidden paths that only machines could read. Daniel whispered, "You are special, more than I imagined." But his joy was short-lived, for he knew the Empire would never allow such power to remain free. That night, Daniel woke to the sound of humming again, louder, closer. He rushed outside and saw shadows moving across the sky, silent but vast. They passed over the colony like hunters circling prey. The people pretended to sleep, but Daniel knew they were all awake, listening, praying. The hum sank into his bones, steady and unbroken. His machines inside went wild, screens flashing, alarms ringing. He shut them down quickly, but it was too late. The signal had already been traced. The girl appeared at the doorway, visor glowing faintly in the moonlight. She whispered, "They are here. I can feel them." Daniel knelt before her, holding her hands tightly. "You must stay hidden. Do you understand?" She shook her head. "No, I will not leave you." Daniel's voice broke. "This is not a game. They will take you. They will destroy everything." But she only tightened her grip, refusing to let go. Her courage frightened him more than the soldiers ever could. By dawn, the colony was restless. 4 black ships were seen resting in the distance, silent and waiting. No one dared to approach. No one dared to ask why. The elders gathered in secret, whispering that someone had broken the law. Their eyes turned toward Daniel's workshop. And though no words were spoken aloud, Daniel felt their judgment pressing against him like a wall. Inside, Daniel prepared. He strengthened the doors, locked his machines, and built small traps of wires and sparks. He taught the girl how to stay low, how to listen for danger. But deep down, he knew his defenses were nothing against the Empire's. Elite, still he worked, because doing nothing was worse. That night the humming stopped. The sky was clear, silent, almost too calm. Daniel felt the change in the air, the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. He sat by the window, visor glowing faintly on the table. The girl leaned against him, her voice soft. "Why are you afraid?" Daniel whispered. "Because shadows are never silent for long." Then it happened. A sharp noise cut through the night like metal tearing the sky. Daniel rushed outside and saw 4 dark figures descending from the air. They were tall, armored, and moved with perfect precision. Their boots touched the ground without sound, their eyes glowing like fire behind black helmets. 4 elite soldiers. They stood in formation, silent and unbroken, their presence heavier than stone. Daniel's heart raced, but his voice was steady. He whispered to himself, "So it begins." And in that moment, he knew. The shadows in the sky had finally taken shape. They had come for him, and for the girl who now saw the world too clearly. The arrival of 4 soldiers. The colony had never been so silent. Not even during storms did people hide this way. Doors stayed locked, windows closed, voices hushed to whispers. Everyone felt the same fear, a fear that came from the sky. At the edge of the settlement, 4 armored figures stood in the dust. They did not move like men. They moved like shadows given form. Their armor was black and silver, glowing faintly with strange symbols. Helmets hid their faces, but their eyes shone red, sharp, and unblinking. Each carried a weapon that hummed with hidden power. The elite soldiers of the Empire had arrived. Daniel stood in the doorway of his workshop, his body stiff, his throat dry. He had seen soldiers before, but never these. These were not common guards, these were hunters chosen for one task: to take what the Empire wanted and to destroy whoever stood in the way. The girl peeked from behind him, her visor glowing, faintly. Her small hand clutched his shirt, her voice a whisper. "They are here for me." Daniel swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay calm. "They don't have to take you," he whispered back. "Not while I breathe." The soldiers approached. In silence, their boots sinking into the dust, one raised a hand and the other stopped. His voice was deep, mechanical, stripped of warmth. "Human engineer, you have created a forbidden device." He pointed at the girl's visor without hesitation. "Give it to us, and step aside, or you will be erased." Daniel's heart pounded. His mind raced. He wanted to shout, to deny, to run, but the girl's trembling hand reminded him why he stood there. He raised his chin and answered, his voice steady though his body shook. "She is not a device. She is a child, His words hung in the air, bold and foolish. The leader tilted his head, his red eyes narrowing. Children born broken must remain broken. That is law. Daniel felt anger surge inside him, burning hotter than fear. Law does not decide who deserves to see, he said. She has the right to live, the right to hope, and I will not let you take that away. For a long moment, silence ruled the night. The soldiers did not answer, but the air around them grew heavier. Their weapons glowed brighter. Humming with quiet threat, the leader stepped closer, his shadow falling across Daniel's doorway. You stand in the way of the Empire, human, he said coldly. Your kind was warned never to interfere, yet here you are, breaking what should never be fixed. The girl pressed closer to Daniel's back, her visor showing the faint heat of the soldiers. She whispered, They are ready to strike. Daniel's hands shook, but he did not move aside. Instead, he stepped forward, standing between the soldiers and the girl. If you want her, he said, you will have to go through me. The soldiers exchanged no words, no gestures. Yet, Daniel felt the shift in their stance. They were preparing, waiting for the command. His workshop behind him was filled with machines, half-finished, unstable, dangerous. He knew they were weak against real weapons, but they were all he had. His mind raced with possibilities, traps, sparks, tricks that could buy even a moment. The leader raised his hand slowly, palm facing Daniel. The glow from his armor spread, crawling across his body like fire under the skin. Very well, he said. If you choose to defy us, then your workshop will be your grave. The girl cried out, No, and stepped forward, visor glowing brighter than before. The soldiers froze for a second, surprised by the strange light. The leader tilted his head again, studying her carefully. This visor, it is stronger than we expected, he muttered. Perhaps too strong to leave in human hands. Daniel pulled her back quickly, his voice sharp. Stay behind me. But the soldiers had already seen enough. They were no longer just here for the visor. They were here for the girl. Her gift was no longer just sight. It was power. The leader lowered his hand, signaling the others. Weapons rose in unison, glowing with deadly energy. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Fear clawing at his chest, he whispered to the girl. When I say run, you run, do you understand? She shook her head fiercely. I will not leave you. But Daniel only gritted his teeth, ready to do the impossible. The soldiers took one, stepped forward, their red eyes fixed on him. The ground shook faintly under their boots. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. Daniel's machines flickered to life, sparks dancing in the shadows. He tightened his grip on the wrench in his hand, his only weapon. His heart pounded like thunder, but his voice came steady. Then, let's see what the Empire fears more. A broken child who can see or a human who refuses to bow. And as the soldiers raised their weapons to fire, the first trap in the workshop snapped awake, filling the night with blinding sparks. The choice of a human, the workshop shook with the roar of sparks, a wall of light flashing between Daniel and the soldiers. For a heartbeat, the soldiers paused, their red eyes narrowing behind dark helmets. The trap had not hurt them, but it had surprised them, and that was enough for Daniel. He grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her back deeper into the workshop. Machines buzzed, gears spun, and coils of energy rattled as if alive. The whole place had become a maze of shadows and lightning. The soldiers stepped forward without fear, their boots pressing through the smoke. Their weapons glowed brighter, humming with a sound that made the air vibrate. One spoke, his voice sharp like metal cutting stone. You cannot win, human. Surrender the child, and we will leave your body whole. Daniel's grip tightened on the wrench in his hand, his jaw set. She is not yours to take, he shouted. She belongs to no empire. The girl trembled behind him, her visor glowing softly in the dark. Through it, she saw heat trails, glowing outlines, the faint shimmer of energy building in, the soldiers' weapons. Her small voice rose, steady despite her fear. They are aiming for you, she whispered. Move. Daniel ducked just as a beam of light sliced through the air, burning a line across the wall. Sparks rained down. But Daniel kept moving, dragging her with him. Every machine in the workshop came alive, clattering and sparking. Not weapons, not truly, but Daniel had built them with care. He twisted knobs, pulled levers, and redirected power. Old engines coughed out smoke. Vents blasted steam. Coils snapped with electric arcs. The workshop became a storm of chaos, and Daniel used it as his shield. The soldiers advanced without hesitation, cutting through the smoke with precision, but their steps slowed, their vision blurred by the sudden storm of light and shadow. The girl tugged Daniel's arm, pointing with trembling fingers. "There, the one on the left, his armor is weak," she said. Daniel blinked, stunned. "How do you see that?" She answered softly. "The visor shows me cracks. It shows me what is hidden." For a moment, Daniel felt hope spark inside him. His invention was more than he dreamed, more than sight. It was survival. "Then guide me," he said quickly. "Tell me where to strike." The girl's voice became steady, sure, like a compass in the storm. "There now, move left," she whispered. Daniel swung the wrench with all his strength, smashing it into the soldier's arm. The weapon flew from his hand, clattering across the floor. The soldier staggered back, more shocked than hurt. The others turned sharply, red eyes glowing hotter. One spoke, his voice cold with fury. "You dare raise your hand against us?" Daniel stood firm, his chest heaving. "I dare to protect what is right," he said, his voice raw but unbroken. The soldiers spread out, surrounding the workshop. Daniel's machines sparked and smoked, but they would not hold much longer. The girl clung to his arm, whispering warnings. Guiding his steps, she saw the unseen, the heat of weapons before they fired, the weakness in armor before it cracked. Together, they dodged blasts and strikes, barely staying ahead. But Daniel knew the truth. The soldiers were only testing him. They could crush him at any moment. At last, the leader raised his hand, signaling the others to stop. The sudden silence was worse than the fight, heavy and final. The leader stepped closer, his voice low and certain. "You have made your choice, human, but know this. Defiance has only one ending." His gaze shifted to the girl, visor glowing like a tiny star in the shadows. "She will not be hidden forever. Her gift will bring destruction to both of you." Daniel's chest burned with anger, but also with fear. He knew the soldier's words were not empty. The Empire would not stop. Still, he stepped forward, standing between the leader and the girl once more. "If you want her," he said, voice steady as steel, "then you will have to end me first." The girl's hand tightened on his arm, her voice breaking. "Don't say that." But Daniel did not move. His choice was made. The leader tilted his head, studying him. No human had ever stood against them this way, not with such fire. At last, the leader raised his hand again, signaling the soldiers. Their weapons glowed, humming with deadly energy. The air grew hot, the floor trembled, the walls cracked under the pressure. The girl gasped. "They will fire. They will destroy everything." Daniel's heart pounded like a drum, but he did not move aside. He raised his wrench, a foolish weapon against their power, yet his eyes burned with defiance, his voice carrying through the smoke. "She has the right to see, the right to live, and I will not let you take that away." For a long moment the soldiers did not fire. The red glow of their weapons lit the dark, but no shot was released. The leader's voice came at last, colder than ice. "Then you have chosen death, human, and it will be given," the girl cried out, pulling at Daniel's arm, her visor glowing brighter than ever. Strange patterns danced across the lenses, lines of light weaving like fire. The soldiers froze for half a breath, watching the glow. Something about it unsettled them. Though they did not show fear, the leader lowered his hand again, his tone sharp. "Take them both, alive if possible." And with that command, the soldiers surged forward together, weapons blazing, shadows flooding the workshop. Fight in the dark. The soldiers moved like shadows of death, their weapons glowing with fire. Daniel pulled the girl close and threw a switch on the wall. In an instant, the workshop lights went out, plunging everything into deep darkness. The soldiers froze for half a breath, their red eyes glowing in the black. Then they spread out, searching, confident that nothing could hide from them, but the dark was Daniel's plan. For weeks he had wired his workshop with traps, machines that hummed, sparked, and shifted. Now, with the power cut, the workshop became a maze of moving gears and false signals. Every step the soldiers took made something clatter, hiss, or spark. They could not see clearly, but the girl could. Her visor glowed faintly, revealing the heat of bodies, the shimmer of energy, the outlines of danger. She tugged Daniel's arm, whispering directions. Left. They are coming from the right. Now, duck. One is aiming. Her voice was sharp and steady, guiding him through the storm. Daniel swung his wrench at just the right moment. Metal struck armor with a heavy crack, forcing one soldier back. Another blast of light shot across the room, but Daniel was already moving. The girl had warned him, saving his life again and again. Together, they became something the soldiers had not expected. A team, human will and alien vision working. As one, the workshop was alive with chaos. Engines sputtered, smoke filled the air, wires snapped with sparks. Daniel kicked over a barrel, spilling oil across the floor. A soldier stepped on it and slipped, crashing into a table of gears. The sound roared like thunder, and for the first time, Daniel felt a spark of hope. But the soldiers were not ordinary fighters. They adapted quickly, their armor shifting to absorb blows, their movements sharper with every second. One of them grabbed Daniel by the shoulder and hurled him across the room. He hit the ground hard, his wrench skidding away. The girl screamed, rushing to his side. Her visor flashed brighter, strange patterns of light weaving across its glass. The soldier turned toward her, weapon rising, but suddenly he froze. His body jerking as if struck by invisible chains, Daniel looked up in shock. The visor was glowing like fire. The girl's cloudy eyes were wide, her voice trembling. I can see their energy, I can push it. And with a cry she lifted her hand and the soldier staggered back, crashing into the wall. Daniel's mind raced, stunned by what he saw. The visor was no longer just a tool. It had become something greater. It was amplifying her, giving her power she had never known. He crawled to his feet, pulling her close, whispering, "Don't be afraid of it. Use it. Use everything." The fight raged on, the soldiers striking with deadly precision. But now the girl was more than a frightened child. She guided Daniel, pointed out weak points, blinded the soldiers with bursts of light from the visor. Every step they took, she was there, showing the path. Daniel swung, dodged, and struck again, his body burning with exhaustion but driven by her voice. One soldier fell to his knees, armor sparking and broken. Another staggered back, blinded by the visor's strange glow. The leader raised his hand, his voice sharp with fury. "Enough. This ends now." His weapon roared with deadly light, tearing through machines, shattering walls. The workshop shook as if the earth itself was breaking. Daniel pulled the girl into cover, his chest heaving. "We can't hold them forever," he whispered. The girl's visor flickered, the light dimming. "I can't see clearly. It's too much," she said weakly. Daniel's hands shook, his heart pounding. If the visor failed now, they were finished. But then he looked into her face, small and scared yet unbroken, and he felt something stronger than fear. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You are not weak. You are not broken. You are more than they will ever understand." Her eyes widened, her visor glowing again, brighter than before. She nodded, her voice steady. "Then let's fight together." The leader stormed forward, his red eyes blazing. Daniel stood with the girl at his side, both facing him. The workshop burned around them, smoke rising into the night. The other soldiers regrouped, weapons raised, their shadows long and sharp. Daniel gripped a broken piece of metal in his hand, his last weapon. The girl's visor blazed with light, showing every line, every path, every weakness. For a moment, time seemed to stop. A human engineer and a blind alien child standing against 4 elite soldiers of the Empire. Weakness had turned into strength, fear into defiance. And together they were ready to fight until the last breath. The leader raised his weapon, his voice like thunder. "You cannot win, human. You cannot win, child." Daniel answered, his voice calm and fierce. Maybe not, but we can make you remember us. The girl's visor flashed once more, a burst of light filling the room like a new star. The soldiers shielded their eyes, their formation breaking. And in that chaos, Daniel shouted, "Now!" Together they leapt forward, charging into the storm, a new vision of humanity. The flash of the visor lit the workshop like a star had fallen to earth. The soldiers staggered, their red eyes blinded, their formation broken. Daniel and the girl charged forward together, their hearts pounding as one. Metal clashed, sparks flew, smoke curled into the air. It was chaos, but inside that chaos there was strength. Daniel swung the broken pipe in his hands with desperate force. It struck one soldier's armor, sending him crashing back into a wall of machines. The girl cried out, her visor glowing, brighter, showing Daniel every opening, every path. "Now his left side, it is weak," she shouted. Daniel struck again, the sound of cracking armor filling the air. The soldier fell to one knee, sparks bursting from his chest plate. But the leader was stronger, faster, his weapon glowing like a burning sun. He fired a blast that tore through the floor, sending debris flying. Daniel shielded the girl with his body, pain ripping through his arm as shrapnel cut into him. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall, refusing to let her go. The leader stepped closer, his voice sharp. "You fight well, human, but courage will not save you." The girl stood up beside Daniel, visor blazing like fire. Her small voice rose, steady and fierce. "Maybe courage is enough," she said. The visor's light spread out in waves, bending, twisting. The soldiers froze for a moment, caught in the strange glow. Their movement slowed, their weapons flickering as if the visor disrupted their energy. Daniel's eyes widened, his heart racing. She's controlling it," he whispered. The visor was no longer just showing her the world. It was reaching out, bending the very power of the soldiers. The girl's face was pale, but her eyes burned with determination. "I will not go back to darkness," she cried. "I will not let them take us," the leader roared, breaking free from the light's hold. His weapon raised high, glowing brighter than ever. Daniel lunged forward, striking with the last of his strength. The pipe clashed against the weapon, sparks flying. The sound rang like thunder, shaking the walls for a heartbeat. Human hands held back the Empire's blade. The other soldiers regrouped, dragging their fallen comrade up. The leader raised his hand, signaling retreat. His voice echoed through the smoke, cold and sharp. "This is not over, human. This is only the beginning." The soldiers stepped back, their forms fading into the darkness. Within seconds they were gone, vanishing into the night sky. The workshop was silent, broken, and burned. Daniel dropped to his knees, his body heavy, his breath ragged. The girl knelt beside him, her visor flickering. Tears filled her cloudy eyes. "You are hurt," she whispered. Daniel smiled weakly. "I've been worse, don't worry." But his voice trembled with exhaustion. They sat together in the ruins, the smoke rising, the machines silent. The colony outside remained hidden. No one dared to come. But Daniel knew the truth. The people had seen. They had seen a human stand against the Empire. They had seen a blind child shine like a star in the darkness. Whispers would spread, and soon the Empire would return, stronger, angrier, unstoppable. Yet, as Daniel looked at the girl, he felt no regret. She was more than a child now, more than a survivor. She was hope. Living proof that weakness could become strength. That no law, no empire could decide who deserved to see. Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "They will come again, but next time, we will be ready." The girl held his hand tightly, her visor glowing faintly. "Together," she said softly. Daniel nodded. His mind already racing with ideas. He would rebuild, not just the visor, but something greater. Weapons of light, machines of vision, tools that turned sight into strength. If the Empire feared a single prototype, then they would tremble before what was coming. The night sky stretched wide above them, stars burning like fire across the dark. The girl lifted her face, her visor reflecting the endless lights. "They are beautiful," she whispered. "So many, so far." Daniel followed her gaze, his heart steady. "Yes," he said. "And one day, we will show them what humanity can do." the ruins of the workshop glowed faintly with dying sparks, but inside the ashes, something new was born. Not just invention, not just survival, but rebellion, a promise carried in the heart of a human and the eyes of an alien child, a promise that the Empire's shadows would not last forever. Far above, in the cold silence of space, the soldier's ship vanished into the void, but the leader's voice echoed in Daniel's memory. This is only the beginning. Daniel looked at the girl, her visor glowing brighter with every heartbeat. He whispered to himself, his voice steady and sure, "Then let it begin."